What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Leinart, 2004 Heisman Trophy winner, and you're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in beautiful downtown Phoenix. This is episode 5 of season 4 of the Harris Highlight Show. Join me this week is our college football analyst Josh Schaefer, with our college football expert Lyle Goldstein, our executive producer Brady Klein, and I am your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Gentlemen, a little later than normal. There was always some sort of problems with the equipment, with the studio and whatnot, but we're recording, and we got some fun stuff coming in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I'm excited. It was a good week of college football. We've got a fun show planned, and it should be an exciting episode.
It's certainly a lot better games than what we had last week to talk about, no doubt about that. So a jam-packed show.
Yeah, Blake, don't talk bad about the studio. She's a nice lady.
That's fantastic. Now, normally we start talking about our fantasy teams and a bunch of other fun stuff, but to start the show this week, guys, we're going to be having a caller. Now, we got to wait for the caller to call in. Should we say who it is yet, Josh, or should we build the suspense and wait for people to hear who the caller is when he calls?
Whichever you'd like.
That's a tough question.
What do you mean? It's our show. You get to decide.
Oh,
That
that's
is
right.
true.
It's our show. We can wait until we get the phone call. There it is. There it is. The phone is ringing right now.
We got the phone ringing right now, but yeah, so a very fun show planned ahead. If you're listening to the show right now, make sure to follow us on Twitter at the HHShow_. And if you're watching this on YouTube whenever it's posted, make sure to follow along with us and listen live every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on BlazeRadioOnline.com. So I think we got the plug down pretty much. Hopefully people tune in. Hopefully people are following along with us on Twitter. And Brady, we are ready to go. Now joining us this week on the Harris Highlight Show was former USC and Pittsburgh starting quarterback and current college football analyst for Stadium and SiriusXM, as well as the USC Football Radio Network, Max Browne. Max, thank you for taking the time and joining us. How's your night going tonight, my man?
Of course, guys. Yeah, no, it's going great. I'm on the East Coast, so it's a little bit late, but always time to talk college football, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so you're calling from New York, so I guess our first question to you is, what's going on over there in New York for you this week?
Yeah, for me this week, let's see. I do some weekly segments, like you said, with Stadium, and got the USC stuff as well, but my day job, I work for Gary Vee, for those listeners that kind of know what he's about. Big social media presence and great guy, and so I do some work for him on the strategy side. But, yeah, man, been out in New York for 8 months or so. A West Coast guy at heart, but so far so good.
Max, at least so far, what do you miss about the West Coast, and what is different but good about the East Coast?
It's a good question. I'm going to have the simple answer for the first one, in that I just miss the people. So those are my just friends, girlfriend, family, the whole deal. Let's see if I can come up with something a little more juicy for you, though. I guess I miss driving a car. I don't miss the traffic, but I guess I miss driving a car. It's always weird when I get in a car at all nowadays because I'm so used to the subway. But different but better about New York. I guess the flip side of that is my commute time is way faster now. I just pop on my one little subway route. I'm in work in 10, 12 minutes or so, and it's not the half an hour drive like Southern California or Seattle is.
So Blake mentioned that you're working with USC now. What is your travel schedule like between living in New York but also working for USC football?
Yeah, so I pop over to LA for all the home games, which, believe it or not, SC's already done with half of them. So, yeah, I mean, I pop over there. I fly out Friday night, or last week it was Thursday night because of the Friday night game, and then I take the red eye back on Sunday night straight into work on Monday morning. So it's a little bit of a grind, but I love it, and got to do what you got to do.
So at least in terms of USC, we've seen a lot from the Trojans this season. some weeks you think, all right, USC might actually be the real deal this week, and then they falter up at BYU. But I think the biggest story so far has been the play of their backup quarterbacks in both Keaton Slovis and now Matt Fink. What is your overall, what types of impressions have they given you through the first couple weeks of the season?
Yeah, impression is nothing but positive. I've been blown away with just it's really like plug and play at the quarterback position, it feels like, which I don't think I ever have used that term. And when you talk about quarterbacks, usually you need reps and you need kind of the feel for the offense and all that. But it's a credit to those guys. Matt Fink's the guy. I do not know Keaton Slovis on a personal level. I know JT Daniels just in passing, but I am good buds with Matt Fink. We were in the same locker room and same quarterback room for a year there, and so I'm impressed with his ability to really stay locked in. I mean, that's hard. I don't want to get long-winded with his backstory, but people that know it, I mean, his time at SC has been tough. Talk about losing some competition battles and kind of staying there as a redshirt junior. He dabbled with the transfer portal, stayed at SC, and so to stay mentally locked in to the point where his number was called last week and he's able to go out there and ball out, I was super happy for him and impressed. But by and large, I think it shows how quarterback-friendly that offense is that Graham Harrell brought, and all those quarterbacks seem to have success. But to your point, that BYU loss was definitely an outlier, and for SC fans, hopefully that doesn't show this week against UW.
Well, Max, to stick on Graham Harrell for a second, through these first few games, how have you really seen this offense just grow and develop in such short time under kind of his guidance?
Yeah, the one tangible thing, I always, because I've been asked that question a couple times, obviously just being a part of the radio broadcast and whatnot, but the one tangible thing I see is they're able to create easier throws this year than they were ever able to when I was there, when Matt Barkley was there, when Darnold was there. The whole deal. I think they just have have a knack for getting like easy 5 yards, just kind of whenever they want it, to be honest, whether it's hitches or quick outs. And part of that is just how scary those receivers on the outside are in Michael Pittman and Tyler Vaughn. But when you kind of backtrack USC receivers, you talk about Nelson Aguilar, who he's all over social media feeds today, and you talk about Juju Smith-Schuster as well, guys that always kind of instilled fear in opposing defenses. But for some reason, this new air raid offense, besides all the obvious parts of being more wide open and 4 receivers and less running the ball and all that stuff, the one thing that sticks out to me is just how easy it is to find easy completions, and that's definitely advantageous when you start a young quarterback or a third-string quarterback. So, yeah, that's what sticks out to me.
Now, Max, you spent time, as I mentioned, at USC and Pitt. Now, USC obviously part of the Pac-12, and you go over to Pitt, part of the ACC. So you got to experience some pretty cool college football atmosphere, some pretty good environments. What would you say kind of the differences are between the Pac-12 and ACC? Now, it could be maybe like crowd size. It could be maybe just the way it feels on game day, different like stadiums. I know for some players playing in bigger stadiums, it's a lot different than playing in some of the smaller stadiums because, over there in the ACC, it's a huge deal. So from your experience, just overall, what would you say some of like the differences are? And I guess, what would you kind of give the edge to? What kind of atmosphere did you enjoy more, the Pac-12 or the ACC?
It's a great question. I think atmosphere, when I think about the West Coast and Pac-12, you think of kind of Washington and Oregon. I think you guys are in Arizona State territory. I always thought that was a great place to play, and probably part of that's probably because I was part of SC, and Arizona State fans really get up for those games, and we always kind of had night games, so it was fun. But even like Rice Eccles at Utah, I think is like the most underrated stadium in the country. But then on the ACC front, I never got to play at Clemson, but played at Penn State in an out-of-conference game, and then at Virginia Tech. I was hurt that game, but was still part of that. And so I think in terms of electric atmosphere, Virginia Tech is probably. Don't get me wrong. The Enter Sandman to start the game. That was wild, but I didn't get him at night, so it wasn't as rowdy, but it was still incredible. And then Penn State obviously had Big Ten country, so not comparing ACC to Pac-12, but that was 100,000 strong in a rivalry game when I was at Pitt, so that was wild. But I think I give the edge to the Pac-12 and that is one area I am passionate about when you talk about kind of East Coast versus West Coast bias. I think it's definitely a thing. I remember my teammates at Pittsburgh that would talk about the West Coast like that football was just kind of was just an afterthought, just to keep it real. And the idea of a Pac-12 after dark game ever being watched at 2 a.m. was just kind of a joke to them. So I think I give the edge, but I give the edge to the Pac-12. I think top to bottom, it's a stronger conference. I think the bottom of the ACC, when you look at some of those teams, they're just not good football teams. And I think even in the Pac-12 right now, when you're talking an Oregon State, sure, they might not be where you want to be, but after that, I mean, we just saw UCLA beat up on a good Washington State team. We saw, or not beat up, but at least beat a good Washington State team. So I think top to bottom, the Pac-12 is a lot stronger, but I'm also well aware I grew up in Seattle and kind of dreamed of playing in the Pac-12, but that's my unbiased review at least.
Now, piggybacking off of Blake's question, he asked about the stadium. I'm going to ask about the timing. Would you rather play a Pac-12 after dark game, or would you rather play like an ACC game at noon or 1 in the afternoon?
Ooh, as a fan, or playing it, I'd rather play. As a player, I'd rather go. I'd rather go the noon game. But part of that also has to do with you play at noon. Sure, it's an early wake up, but if you win, you can have a good time with your buddies afterwards. So that's always a plus versus the Pac-12 after dark game, especially if you're the road team. You're getting in at 4 or 5 in the morning the next day on a good day. So those Pac-12 after dark games, while it's cool, it's also tough.
So we saw within the last couple of days that Houston's quarterback De'Aaron King said that he's going to sit out for the rest of this season. A lot of people thought, okay, maybe he's going to transfer, but then he said that he's planning on coming back. What do you make about that whole? What do you make of the whole situation?
Yeah, I had the same reaction in terms of, he's transferring. Oh, he must be like trying to go somewhere else. But what I make the whole situation, with any new rule change, you're going to see whoever, whether it's in any walk of life, with any new rule, you're going to see people kind of use that rule to their advantage or kind of toe the line of what's new and what's right and all that. So I think just like with any new rule, this is bound to happen. I think it's unique, obviously. At first, it didn't necessarily sit well with me just because I was like, that's tough to do to your teammates and your locker room and whatnot. But then when I step back, one thing that, always hits home with me is these college quarterbacks and these college players, you get one shot at it. You get one go at it. For me, I had 5 years, that was it. That for every guy, I had 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then that's your run. For us college fans and media members, there's always a new recruiting cycle. There's always a new batch of guys. But for these guys, you get one shot. So if he's sitting there saying, you know what, this isn't the best thing for me, I'm all for player power. And I think one thing that also put me over the edge is he's had a lot of coaching changes. And so if he's sitting there saying, hey, this is year one of a kind of not a rebuild because Houston's still a good football team, but if this is year one of a new program and I want to be here for the long haul or whatever, I can't blame him. And it's different. It's not what we're used to. It's we're not used to this rule and kind of guy and player power, I guess you could say. But I don't mind it, and I know that might brush people the wrong way, but I got no problem with it.
You mentioned that you kind of get this one shot to take a hold of this thing and have that opportunity to go to the next level. And you and I have talked about this a little bit before. We talked about this last year on a different show. But I'm just curious if a quarterback who's in college right now reaches out to you and as a quarterback who did transfer, who did take another step, what would you tell them if they were thinking about transferring? What kind of advice would you offer up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think every guy's different. I think they just got to make my first response to them would be you got to make sure you're transferring for the right reasons. Because if you're transferring because you got in trouble or a coach was tough on you or you didn't get your way on this little thing or that little thing or it just wasn't feeling right, then I worry that you're just going to have those same issues at the next school, and it's probably worth you kind of battling it out. But if you're transferring for kind of the right reasons, and that there's the writings on the wall depth chart wise, or whatever it may be, or you're struggling and kind of need a mental refresh button, then I don't mind it. There's a lot of guys that have transferred and had success, and there's guys like like, just to be honest, like my story, I mean, I stayed, I battled, ended up losing some competition battles at SC ultimately, and then it kind of shortened my window of college football, and sure enough, had a shoulder injury in kind of my last and final year, and then that's pretty much a wrap. And so would I have done it the same way over again? Oh, no doubt. But it definitely is tough, especially at the quarterback position, kind of sitting and waiting. So I think there's a whole list of factors that I would walk through for guys, but I would just make sure that they're not making a rash decision or rushing to a decision, and making sure they internalize the fact that the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
All right, Max. Now, we took to Twitter before the show to ask some of our viewers to submit some questions they'd like to ask. Now, this first one I really like because, I mean, I remember watching all your YouTube videos. You're great at analyzing film, so I think this one's perfect for you. Saquon Vids wants to know, who do you think is the most underrated quarterback in college football, one that you've seen that you feel might not be getting enough attention from the media?
Yeah, my answer about a month ago was KJ Costello. And I was big on him, or I guess I'll come full circle with this, but I was big on him. I thought he did not get the credit he deserved last year. I think he throws a very catchable ball, and it was kind of, his big receivers are making plays, but he's very, very good. And I think he was a cusp NFL guy. I think this year his team is not as good. I think his offensive line is not as good, and as a result, his running game is not as good, and so it's harder for that team to get rolling. So I don't think it's necessarily him, but I think it is tough to maybe make that argument, but he's a great quarterback, and I think he'll still 100% get an NFL opportunity. But the other guy that sticks out to me is his rival, Chase Garbers at Cal. I mean, you talk about last year, that Cal passing attack was miserable. We're just calling it what it is. It was literally like they were just hanging on every single time they had the ball. And then this year, you kind of look at a game last week at Ole Miss for Cal, and on the road at an SEC opponent, for Chase Garbers to make some big throws in that to really put that team over the edge. I think the step that he's made is big. I think nationally people are starting to wake up to the fact that Cal's a good team, and I don't think they'll win the North, but whoever they continue to beat, it might ultimately decide who wins the North. So those two Bay Area quarterbacks stick out to me.
Now, this final question, this is one that it seems like everyone has a different opinion on, so I'm really interested to know what a former college football player's thoughts are on this, but our final question is, what are your thoughts on possible playoff expansion? Do you like how it is at 4, or would you like to see it somehow, expanded to 6, to 8, or if you were, in charge, what would your dream situation be?
Yeah, the simple answer is I don't have a dream scenario. I go back and forth with this all the time. I think you're always going to have an odd man out. You're always going to have someone from the outside looking in that's complaining. But I guess if I had to put my money where my mouth is in some way, 4 or 8, I guess I would go 8, and I would go the 5 conference champions, and I'd go 3 at large. To me, that settles any and all debates of a team that says, "Hey, we should be in the college football playoff, or we should have a chance. We should have a chance at a national title, but we're not." So if you're that 9th team, there's a lot of room for you to get in that discussion, even if it is for the 3 at-large bids. Obviously, the counter to that is a couple years ago, my Pitt Panthers, if they would have beat Clemson somehow in some goofy way in the ACC championship, and they would have been in as like a 4 or 5 loss team. I'm aware that's the counter, but to me that 8-team structure is probably the best.
Well, Max, we all appreciate you calling in from New York, and just congrats to everything you've been able to accomplish so far. You're doing a fantastic job, and for me personally, we need to see some more videos on your YouTube channel. It's been too long. I mean, we were enjoying these weekly, just videos of you analyzing and breakdown and film. So if you can, let's get some more YouTube content for all those out there.
I'll work on it. Yeah, just hours in the week nowadays. But if you're really looking for it, I have a similar show with Stadium. We break down one of the national games each week, but it's not Pac-12 and it's not in my kitchen. So I'll have to circle back with those moving forward.
Yeah, Max, again, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you out there with whatever your next step is, and maybe sometime down the road we can have you back on the show.
Of course, yeah. Let's make it happen. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, so some fun stuff there. It's always interesting to know. I mean, we've had college football players on in the past, like Bradley Chubb, Michael Pierce, who played at Samford, Lucas Dennis, who played at Boston College. So it's really cool to get a bunch of different perspectives on college football and just see what it's like. And it's really cool having someone that entered the transfer portal, what his thoughts are on the whole transfer situation, and just a whole bunch of stuff. So some great insight. And Max Browne, I don't have his social media handles right now, so if you want to give him a follow, I'll put those in the description of this video, or you can just go to Instagram or Twitter and type Max Browne, and you can find him. But
just remember,
a very
it's an
fun
E
time.
on the end.
There's an E at the end.
Max Browne 4 on Twitter. BROWNE 4.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know he was working with Gary Vee. That's pretty cool. I mean, like, he does a lot of cool videos. Like, I remember watching one about like Mike Trout and the development of like baseball in today's world. Yeah, I mean, he's a really smart guy in general.
His Twitter bio, the first words are "working for @GaryV." So I guess we should have done a little more research.
Well, that's okay. Now, guys, we have just about an hour to do this entire show, so some things are going to have to be a little quicker than before, but that's quite all right. And it's time to start with our college football fantasy update. And it finally happened. I took the loss this past week to Brady, 219 to 175. Now, with how much, I was talking this past week about how great my team was, which it still is, I pretty much anticipated a loss was going to be coming. Now, granted, there were some keys as to what gave me the loss this week. First off, Zach Moss going down with an injury. That's not going to help anytime soon. I mean, he went down in the first quarter, only got me 2 points, so that was essentially nothing. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for LSU, he left the game with an injury, so I was only able to get 6 points from him. And it's not really that ideal when Trevor Lawrence literally exits the game in the first quarter. Not with an injury. They were just beating Charlotte that bad. So if of course I'm not going to make excuses, although this is a pretty good excuse. I feel had my team been fully healthy, they would have played all 4 quarters. I would have put up a better fight because I did only lose by about 40 points. So if you're asking me from a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver to get me 40 points in this high-scoring league, I feel like I could have done it.
I feel like you're in second place.
Well, that's actually the craziest part. So I'm currently in second place, and that's just because I trailed Josh by 0.61 points.
Yep.
On the season, Josh has 816.74 points, and I have 816.13 points. Wow. There you go. That was a very similar. That voice sounded awfully familiar, but that's quite all right because Lyle still comes in winless at 0-4. So for those of you in the Twitter poll last week that voted that I would lose a game before Lyle won a game, congratulations, you won. Lyle, you are 0-4. At this point, I don't even know what to say.
Speech.
I do. I'll say that this game was really close, and then Anthony Gordon threw for 9 touchdowns. I think this lead doesn't get me.
I feel like we should mention the fact that in this matchup, Josh did in fact have Anthony Gordon, who did put up a nice, cool 57 points this week.
9 passing touchdowns. Like, this game was close.
I got 100 points for my quarterbacks.
I know this is becoming a running joke, and that's fine. BK beat me by like 2.5 points, and then Anthony Gordon throws for 9 touchdowns against me. Like in our other league, in our 10-man league, I'm 2-2, as is everybody else. But yeah, man, I just cannot catch a break so far.
He has 21 touchdowns on the season. That's insane.
Like these Mike Leach guys, man.
9 were in one game. 9 of them were in one game.
9 of them were in one game, and it was a loss.
Why is my microphone so quiet?
Who knows, man? Maybe it's for the best.
Oh, okay.
Now, as I mentioned, we are kind of running a little low on time, so unfortunately, to my... This breaks my heart, guys. We have to cut out the AP poll talk. I was dying to talk about the AP poll. I really wanted to, but it's just going to have to wait now. I know Lyle did have a take where he thought Michigan shouldn't have fallen that many spots for losing to a ranked team, so I know that. But we can talk about that when we get to the game. So instead of talking about the AP poll, we're going to head on over and talk about some of the games from this past weekend, because what a weekend of college football it was. It was absolutely phenomenal, arguably the best weekend we've had this season, maybe one of the best weekends we've had going back the last few years. Now let's start with, this wasn't the most exciting game, but this was arguably the biggest game, and that is Georgia-Notre Dame. Georgia gets the 6-point victory. I still don't understand why Georgia was favored by 16 points in this game over Notre Dame. I think they were forgetting that Notre Dame's, a top 7 team. Notre Dame had their chance at the very end to win the game. They ultimately couldn't get the job done. But guys, for you, I'm going to propose the question. What was your biggest takeaway from the game? Were you impressed with how Georgia looked? Were you impressed with how Notre Dame looked? Were you disappointed with how one of these teams looked?
It was a little bit of the first two that you said, Blake. I think that Georgia's the real deal. I think they're a top 5 team in the country for a reason. I think they can. I think they're going to compete with Alabama this year too, and I mean they have in the past, but I think they really compete with Bama this year. Another takeaway that I have is that I think Notre Dame competed. They lost by 6 points. The spread was, what did you say, 16 and a half?
16 points.
16. I mean that's insane, and I don't understand that spread in the slightest. But I think Notre Dame's a good football team. They have a tough schedule for the most part. It seems like they do most years. Now that they lost early, you can look at it two ways, and it's one, all right, they lost early. They still have the opportunity to win out. Wouldn't you rather lose early than lose late and still have a chance of getting into the playoffs? So there's that. Also, the fact that they lost early, and I think that there are still a few games on their schedule where they can potentially lose, and I think that's something to consider. But I think that Notre Dame can compete. I just don't think they're there.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate what you said. I think Georgia's a top 4 or 5 team this year. I think Notre Dame's a top 10 team. They just might not be a playoff caliber team the way they were last year. But if their one loss, if they lose one game this year, happens to be on the road in Athens, I mean, that still looks pretty good on a schedule. If they go win in Ann Arbor, they beat Virginia this week, et cetera, et cetera.
And USC, yeah.
And USC.
USC's ranked.
That's true. My biggest takeaway from this game is look, I mean, Georgia's front 7 is unreal. They held Notre Dame's rushing attack to 46 yards. But the biggest takeaway I kind of have is look, here's kind of my synopsis on Ian Book. The guy's a game manager, and he's not a bad quarterback. I think he's a good college quarterback. He's never going to lose you a game that you're supposed to win. He will win you the games you're supposed to win, but when he goes up against superior competition, to this point, I haven't seen him be able to, or the country hasn't been able to see him kind of rise above that and take down a really good team. Spoiler, I think Jake Fromm's a little bit like that too, but not at the level of Book. I think Fromm is a little bit better than that. But for Ian Book, like to this point, he has not beaten a major powerhouse team, and until he does, I mean, I think that's going to kind of be the cloud that hangs over his head for the time being.
I couldn't watch the game. I was working all weekend, so I didn't.
Well, I was going to say,
I followed along, but I mean. The one thing I just pointed to Blake to have him speak, and then I came up with something. The one thing I'm going to take away from this game is that, and this is a very, very just common thought, is that DeAndre Swift's a dog. Like, he is good. And that's not a pun because he's on Georgia. No. He's just good. Like, he can flat out play.
Yeah. He's fantastic, and I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL, too.
I mean, he did have a really good hurdle. That was the highlight of the game.
He's one of the few bigger running backs that is actually elusive as well.
Now, I forget what we were watching. I can't remember what game we were watching, but they showed a photo of the fact that Georgia at one point had Todd Gurley, Sony Michel, and Nick Chubb, and now they have DeAndre Swift. So I think Georgia's easily established themselves as the running back. But I think you guys pretty much answered my question. If Notre Dame essentially wins out, they still have a legitimate chance at the playoff. Now, looking at their schedule, they do got Michigan, they do have USC. The rest of that, Virginia Tech, that could be a good win. Virginia is going to be a ranked opponent this upcoming week, so they definitely have what it takes, but I think they're going to have to win in convincing fashion. I think they can't really have a close win over any of these teams, but I think Notre Dame, without a doubt, especially considering they only dropped, I think, from 7 to 10. Now, granted, the college football playoff rankings mean absolutely everything compared to the AP poll, so we're going to have to wait and see, but Josh hit it perfectly. It's better to lose now this early in the season as opposed to in November when you're ranked 4th or 5th, and then you lose. Well, now this way, you're ranked 4th or 5th or 6th heading into that, and you're like Lyle said, your only loss is 6 points on the road at Georgia, who's probably going to be a top 2 or 3 team.
Yeah, and now with Michigan's loss to Wisconsin, I think that game suddenly doesn't look as good as it did, or as menacing as it did on Notre Dame's schedule earlier this season. But here's the thing. Now that if your only loss is to a number 3 Georgia team, that's something that I think is a positive and maybe a negative. Like, okay, you played one top 5 team and you lost. But assuming they win out. But another thing is now they still have a lot of ranked opponents on their schedule, especially if USC wins this week at Washington. SC's a top 20
maybe top 16 team when they play next week in South Bend. So if you say that Notre Dame wins out, they're going to have ranked wins, I'm going to assume, over USC, over Virginia, over Michigan, and that looks really good if you're still trying to get into a playoff position with one loss, and that one loss is to Georgia.
Moving on now to the next game. We were talking about playoff, contending teams, and I think it's time to talk about the Auburn Tigers. Now this was a very, very good game as well. Auburn, Texas A&M, they get the win at Texas A&M, which is one of the toughest places to play in all of college football. Now Auburn, who through 4 games has 2 of probably the best wins so far this season in college football. You can maybe throw Georgia in there, but Auburn, they beat Oregon to start the season. They came back, and then they won a game at Texas A&M. So again, it's only 4 games. The season's only a third of the way over. But are the Auburn Tigers legitimate playoff contenders? Now, their schedule coming up is going to be absolutely brutal. I mean, they got to go to Florida, at LSU, versus Georgia. I mean, then they finish the season with Bama, so that's going to be a tough schedule. But maybe if they're good enough and they lose to Alabama, then maybe a Georgia, they'll have what it takes. I'm not entirely sure. But from what you've seen so far, what you've seen with Bo Nix, are they a legitimate contender?
Well, you just beat me to the punchline on it, and my honest answer is no. Do I think they're a good football team? Sure. But between Florida, LSU, Georgia, and Alabama, I don't think there's a great chance that they win 3 of those 4 games, especially the final 3 at the end of the year with LSU, Georgia, and Alabama. Bo Nix is a promising quarterback. I think he's got a future. But again, I mean, talking about how he's looked, he was 12 for 20 for 100 yards exactly. That's just not going to cut it against some of these top dogs in the SEC. I think Auburn finishes around 8 to 10 in the final rankings, but I just don't think they quite finish in the top 4.
One of the biggest concerns for me about this Auburn team as you look at this game is your potentially Heisman, not front runner, but Heisman candidate, Bo Nix, threw 20 passes, 12 of which were completed. You're going to need more from your quarterback if you want him to be a Heisman contender, a playoff contender, a championship contender. More than 20 passes. And it's not like the run game was top tier either. They didn't have a whole lot of run. Their leading rusher was 67 yards. So it's just Bo Nix threw for 100.
Yeah,
That's not a good game.
Yeah, his numbers weren't great, and I think Bo Nix is a good quarterback, but especially when you look at this maybe if they had a different quarterback, then potentially they would be a little bit more competitive in conference, I think. And I'm not saying they're not going to be competitive. I totally agree with Lau that they finished between 8 and 10, maybe 11. I think they are a top 10 team in college football, and I wouldn't be opposed to saying that with the talent they have, even I'm not saying Bo Nix isn't a good quarterback, but even with Bo Nix at quarterback as a true freshman and throwing for 100 yards in a 28-20 win over Texas A&M, I think that Auburn is legitimately a top 6 team in college football. But based off of their schedule, there's just no way that they go undefeated.
There's somebody on this Auburn team that we should be talking about for a Heisman frontrunner, and that's their backup quarterback, Joey Gatewood, who was 1 for 1 for a touchdown, and his passer rating was 480.
Wow.
So
I should have picked him up in fantasy.
That's next level. Also, do you guys know who the kicker for Auburn is?
Probably
Go ahead. I know exactly where you're going.
It's the younger
with this.
brother of
Carlson!
It's Daniel Carlson's younger brother,
Well, I
Anders.
feel like that's how most college football teams are. It's like
Ricky and Roberto Aguayo.
their brother plays, and then little Junior comes 4 or 5 years later. So
Yeah,
when's Zane's brother going to be here?
Junior would imply that it's like a father's kid, not a
brother. Okay.
It is his brother.
Anyway, but yeah, looking at Auburn's schedule, they don't have a home game for the entire month of October. So they play at home this upcoming Saturday against Mississippi State. Then their next home game is not until November 2nd against Ole Miss. So yeah, it's a really tough schedule, as I mentioned. At Florida, at LSU, home games against Mississippi State, Georgia, and Alabama. I mean, they might lose to Samford. We'll have to wait and see. But at Auburn, definitely as of right now, you can make the case they're a top 4 team because just of their resume so far. But it's going to be tough for them. But just imagine if Bo Nix starts to play just even a little better than what he's done, because we talked about in the Oregon game, he was underwhelming. This game, he was underwhelming. So if he can sort of step up a little, hey, this Auburn team, they might be able to do some damage. But speaking of damage, speaking on the trend of college football playoff contenders, the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, guys, I mentioned this in the group chat earlier, but the first 3 games of the Pick'ems last week, all 3 of us picked the exact same team. And all 4 of us picked the exact same team, and we were all wrong. The first one of them being this one right here. We all picked Michigan to win. not even going to say, did you got like, what are you guys' thoughts about this game? This wasn't a game. This was just Michigan. Just, we're just going to put our players on the field, and they're going to play. Well, Wisconsin's going to play football. We're not. This was an absolutely disgusting game, and now everyone's wanting to know: is Wisconsin all of a sudden? Are they playoff contenders? Because I think until Michigan scored, like, what was it, in the third quarter or so, these were the first points Michigan had allowed all season. So we know their defense is there. Their offensive line is scary. Jonathan Taylor's the best running back in the country. They don't have Alex Hornibrook at quarterback anymore holding them back.
He was there for what,
He's
16
at
years?
Florida State now.
He's now
He played
leading-
for Florida State on Saturday.
Did he really?
Yeah,
But
he
he's
did.
not the starter. I mean,
He's now leading Florida State's a great thing. So we'll get on Michigan in a minute or two. But speaking on Wisconsin first, are they legitimate playoff contenders?
look, I mean, if they have a quarterback that can do just enough, which to this point they do in Jack Cohn, I mean, he's thrown 5 touchdowns through
What a
3
name.
games. Jack Cohn.
Jack Cohn.
Yeah, I mean, so far he's looked pretty good, and against the Michigan defense that's supposed to be really stout, he played pretty well, even if he didn't light it up in the box score. Bottom line is with Wisconsin, you have a quarterback that can do just enough, a running back who is the single best back in the whole country, and then you look at their schedule, their really one standout game is at Ohio State. If they go 11-1 and their one loss is at Ohio State, they have a serious case for this college football playoff, and that's to go and build on. If they can somehow win the Big 12 or the Big 10, they can absolutely get in. So I mean, again, their schedule's pretty favoring their way too.
Yeah, I think they're really talented.
Here's your Alex Hornibrook weekly update.
Oh, thank goodness.
This past week, he was 15 for 20, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns.
He actually looked pretty good.
Thank you.
He
Yeah,
looked
there
pretty
you go.
good. No, but Wisconsin's good. I mean, I think their offense has totally upgraded. They also have Jonathan Taylor, so that's something.
Yeah.
And their defense looked really good. And I think that they're a legitimate contender in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, thanks for all the fantasy points. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate those.
I played Jonathan Taylor in both leagues this week. You had him, and then Jordan had him. And that's the worst part too. In our other league, I lost by 6 points to Big J.
Big J.
That can sound like Jordan from Kirkland, that one caller we had that one time.
Wait,
It did.
hang on.
But looking at Wisconsin's schedule, Lyle
Seattle
mentioned
U
it. The
fan.
toughest game they have is going to be at Ohio State. Now, the good thing for them is they do have Iowa, who's currently ranked 14 at home, and they do have Michigan State, who's currently ranked 25th at home as well. So their toughest games are going to be, that one at Ohio State. The rest are going to get at home. Nebraska, that could be a trap game, but I think Wisconsin has the chance. Now, Michigan. I sent out a tweet on Saturday after this happened, apologizing to those out there for whatever reason, picking Michigan to be in my college football playoff at the end of the year, because my literal reason was they're due. We've been seeing Michigan just underperform the last 4 or 5 years, and they've just never gotten over the hump. So I said it has to come to it. And this year, more than ever, they have to be due. They have everything going for them. Yeah, man, was I wrong. But hey, at least Oregon still has a chance to make the college football playoff. So guys, for Michigan, they do. I would hope so. I would hope Michigan does too. But what's next for Michigan here? Because I know a bunch of people were saying, what do you do with Jim Harbaugh? Like, is he going to get fired anytime soon? I don't think he's going to get fired this season, especially after losing on the road to a top 10 team. But he hasn't won a game on the road. Or I don't know if it's on the road or at home, whatever, but he hasn't won a game as an underdog while as the head coach, which is awful because Herm Edwards has done that already as an underdog. He's won a few of those games. So what do you do next with Michigan? Like, where do you go from here? Because this wasn't a 3 or 4 or 5 point loss on the road. This was, you got embarrassed. I know they only lost by, 21 points.
Only?
Yeah, no, that's bad. That's bad. For a team that was a top 10 team, I think that's
compared
bad.
to the fact that they were down, I think, 35. You look at the box score and you see 21, but it's not as bad as 35. But what is next for Michigan going here?
Look, here's a few things. Number one, they need to turn their season around. And number two, they need to show that they're a little more competitive. Because on last week's show, I said that I was not concerned in the slightest with the way that they played against Army. Because I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought they were going to be fine. And then we see what they do this week, and I mean, they looked bad. They looked horrible, and Wisconsin looked really good. And we all know how competitive the Big Ten is, because I think we can all we've said this multiple times. The SEC is great; they're top heavy. The ACC, clearly they've got one team, they're top heavy, and actually I guess they're bottom heavy. And then you look at the Big Ten and you look at the Pac-12, and I think that those are the two most competitive conferences where maybe one of the bottom 3-4 teams in the conference has the potential to beat one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the conference. I legitimately think that, as we've seen the past 2 weeks in the Pac-12, because it is all over the place.
Now, before we get hate, because we got hate for this last week when we said the Pac-12 was the most competitive, we're not saying the best conference because that is the SEC, but what we mean is that you look at this, Maryland, they can pull off an upset against Michigan. Indiana, maybe not as much, but there's a chance, whereas these other conferences, you look at some of the SEC teams.
You guys think Vanderbilt's beating Bama this year?
No,
but there's a chance that Colorado can beat Oregon. There's a chance.
What's great is what our caller we had at the beginning of the show, who is a college football expert. Josh, Lyle, sorry, you guys aren't expert when Max is on the show.
That's true.
He said the same thing. He said, I'd say the two most competitive conferences in football are, or like we talked about, his comparison between Pac-12 and ACC reaffirmed what we said, is the ACC is 1.5, 2 teams.
Yeah.
Pac-12 is 11 of the 12 teams.
Yeah, and so for that reason, I think that Michigan's schedule is just that much more difficult, because who's to say that a Minnesota can't knock off a Michigan? And again, like, I know that Michigan is the better team, and Michigan should be the better team in 90% of the games they play. But from what we've seen out of their last 2 games, I am no longer confident in Michigan to beat Ohio State at the end of this season, to be a team that can bounce back from one loss and make it to the college football playoff. I don't see that happening anymore with Michigan unless they turn something around, and I think that all starts with Harbaugh. Because here's another tweet that I saw the other day. I saw a tweet that said, Clay Helton's USC is better than Jim Harbaugh's Michigan. I thought that was a stretch, and Harbaugh has more wins and fewer losses than Helton does at USC for both, but it's not a bad point. I mean, SC's won bigger games than Michigan has that time, because Harbaugh just can't win some of those games.
Yeah, I'll be more blunt than that. If he loses to Notre Dame and Ohio State this year, I think there's serious speculation that he's gone, and if you want my 2 cents, I would put money on that it happens.
Postseason?
After the year.
Okay.
Yeah. If he loses to both those schools, again, Notre Dame's at home, and if he loses to Ohio State again, which he is, held above ground, or, just kind of well known for, he can't beat Ohio State. He can't beat them again, and he loses at home to Notre Dame. For a guy that's coaching at a white-collar football school that's expected to compete for a college football playoff spot and a national title every year, I don't see any reason for Michigan to keep him around after year 5, and he still hasn't done anything.
They're a college football blue blood, and we have not seen sheer dominance in one of the top rivalries in sports in a long time. Yeah. And we've seen it in Ohio State and Michigan. And you can look at some other coaches that have been on the hot seat in the past. I mean, for a while, I think this is insane, but a year or so ago, some people were saying that Gus Malzahn should be on the hot seat. I mean, people were saying, they still are, that Clay Helton's on the hot seat. Look, these are still guys that can beat their rivals. And Jim Harbaugh, in his time at Michigan, has not only showed that he can't beat his rivals, but he can't beat elite teams. And I think that is going to be a huge crutch for them.
Well, Michigan's got some good and bad things going for them. The first thing, I guess it's a good thing, they have 5 ranked, currently right now, 5 games left against ranked teams, with 4 of them being at home. So if Michigan can go on this stretch, if they can beat Notre Dame at home, if they can beat Iowa at home, Michigan State at home, if they can go to Penn State, get a victory, and then, of course, the final game against Ohio State, they're going to be in good hands. Now, the problem is they have 5 ranked games where they easily can lose 3 of these. There could be a slip-up at Maryland. There could be a slip-up at Indiana. Michigan, they could literally finish the season 11-1. They could finish the season 8-4. So it's completely in their hands. Now, in regards to Harbaugh, I think if they lose to Ohio State, regardless of unless they go 10-2 and Ohio State's their only other loss, I think he's done. I think if they win 9 games and they lose to Ohio State, because they brought him here literally for 2 things. 1, to just get the program back on track, which he pretty much did, I guess, for the most part. But 2, to beat Ohio State. He hasn't done it since he's been there. And Michigan has just underperformed.
Here's this on Jim Harbaugh. Michigan under Jim Harbaugh, 0-4 against Ohio State. They're 1-9 against top 10 opponents. They're 0-7 as an underdog, 1-6 on the road against ranked opponents, and 5 losses by at least 21 points, including 3 of their last 5 games.
Yeah.
So and we're talking about a blue blood college football program.
Yeah,
we were talking about the winningest program of all time.
Yeah, and for a team that
should be unacceptable
to compete for a national title every year, after 5 years, he still can't get himself above where this team's supposed to be at. He should be out.
And the worst part, the worst part about it is the hype that comes into every single season. And I'm going to revert back to the Clay Helton thing. Last year, SC finished 5-7. That is unacceptable for USC. The other thing is going into the season, everyone's like, I don't know what's going to happen with SC. They're not going to be that good probably. But every year it seems like Jim Harbaugh and Michigan are predicted to be a top 5 football team. Maybe not at the beginning of the season, maybe by the end of the season, but it seems like there is hype going into every single year. And maybe some injuries happen, maybe they get upset by somebody, but bottom line, the program is not where it should be with a guy like Jim Harbaugh in charge.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. But Michigan, it's literally in the palm of your hands with how you want to handle the rest of the season. We talked about this to some extent last week, and that's the fact that there should be a college football playoff with 8 teams, UCF's getting completely rigged. And what happens? They go out and they lose on the road to Pitt. So, I mean, UCF, obviously, it seems like their season now was done. But how about this, guys? We've seen Pitt in the past. We saw it with Clemson a few years ago. We saw it, I think, with Miami. What was it, 2 years ago? And Miami was ranked like 3rd. They went to Pitt. Pitt won the game. So Pitt's just one of those teams. Every year they're 6-6, 5-7, 7-5. But somehow they're always just that one team that gives other teams a hard time. Now, I was watching this game, Lyle. Brandon Wimbush is no longer the starting quarterback at UCF.
I know he got hurt. He might have just gotten. I think he actually just got replaced because
So
he missed
that's
some time.
That's how things are going there. But yeah, UCF. Well, there goes their season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, that was their whole thing. Is what they had to kind of pitch themselves and make their kind of marketing pitch a little bit was the fact that they go undefeated. Yeah, their schedule might not be the toughest of all, but they beat everybody on their schedule, and they should get a shot. Now you lose to a Pitt team who, yes, Power 5 team in the ACC. Regardless, I mean, they're kind of going to go back to a little bit of irrelevancy now. They might finish the year in the low 20s ranked, but not much outside of that.
So UCF, you had your chance and you blew it. I mean, it's the first time they, I think, did back-to-back Power 5 games. Now, they did just today announce they're scheduling games against Boise State and BYU for the future. I'm not exactly sure what years down the line those are.
2020 and 2020 or 2021 and 2023. And I'm trying to look for it right now, actually.
Are they playing both those teams in the same year?
Okay, no.
Or
So they're playing Boise State and UCF are playing each other in 2021 and 2023. I believe 21 is in Orlando, 23 is in Boise, and I'm looking for it right now. Somebody posted a comparison of the future opponents for the two schools, and very clearly Boise State has like the better non-com schedule. And again, it's like so UCF's was like BYU and Georgia Tech, and Boise State's was. Like again, I think it was like Florida State, Michigan State, on the road, BYU 2, UCF, and somebody else was in there too.
Yeah, I'm still confused as to why. I mean, I props to them for scheduling these games, but if you want to make this much of an impact, I don't know why you're not saying, okay, literally any top 25 team we can get on the road, like we want that game. Like BYU and Boise State are good, but I don't know why they're settling for those unless no one just wants to do. I remember, what was it with Bama last year? They said we want to do like a 3 thing where we did like 2 at Alabama, 1 at UCF, and UCF was like, no, we're good. Yeah. So I just don't know what the deal is.
Here's what Boise State's looking at. Now, of course, when they had scheduled to play at Florida State this year, they thought Florida State was going to be good.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not the case. But in the upcoming years, they've got Florida State again, BYU. They did schedule UCF. They've got Oklahoma State, Oregon State, which is whatever, but it's Power 5. Michigan State, Houston at Oregon, Houston again, Washington State, Oregon 3 years in a row. So, I mean, they play some legitimate teams in here, and they play Power 5 teams. But I'll pull up UCF's too.
I mean, so hopefully they can schedule some more games down the line.
Before we move on, can we quickly talk about the team that actually won this game, and more so the final play call that was absolutely masterful, by the way.
The Pitt special?
Yeah, I mean, Pitt. I mean, it looked like Philly. But yeah, that was, to pull that on 4th down inside your own 10-yard line, man, that was... That threw everybody, I'd say, watching off guard. Certainly threw UCF off guard.
That was just a strong finish to the game. That play included just everything. The last, 6 minutes, I would say, were just a strong 6 minutes of football.
My favorite part about the play wasn't the Philly special type thing. It's the fact that the quarterback stepped up to the line to change the play, and the running back took the snap out of the shotgun while the quarterback was changing the play. I do also have UCF's future non-conference, and it's, highlighted by Boise State, Louisville, Georgia Tech. FIU.
Schedule better games.
North
UCF.
Carolina,
Just
like-
that's all you got to do. Schedule better games. But all of these games we've talked about, guys, they were good games. But I don't think they were the most exciting games for the weekend, because the most exciting game from this past weekend was saved for Pac-12 Dark into the wee hours of 1 a.m.
After
Eastern.
dark.
Pac-12 Dark?
Oh, what did I say? Pac-12 Dark?
Dude.
Hey, man, it's been a long day.
Blake, you're off the show.
It's been a long day, so we got to talk about this game, guys. We kind of briefly mentioned it that Josh's starting fantasy quarterback put up 9 touchdowns, 500 and I don't know, what was it, 80 yards, but what an absolute game. Now, everyone talks about that stat line, but I feel like everyone's overlooking the fact that UCLA was down 32 points with 3 minutes in the third quarter. They come back at Wazoo, and this is so ironic because before this game happened, I forget who I was talking to about. Maybe it was our roommate Sean Lyle, but I was telling him how one of the comments on our YouTube video from last week was saying, "Why did you guys not have Washington State or UCLA in the pick'ems?" And I literally responded saying, "Because it's going to be a boring game that no one's going to care about." Well, that should be on Cold Takes Exposed or whatever, because this was one of the best games not only of this season, one of the best games from this past decade, one of the most exciting games. UCLA, they come back from 32
and no
down.
one watched it.
Oh, I was watching it. It was a fantastic game. But what do you guys more? What catches your eye more? The stat lines for not only Wazoo but for UCLA. I forget what the UCLA starting quarterback is. His stat line
DTR.
he was completely overlooked as well, and just it was everything. UCLA. No wins on the season. Washington State's undefeated. There were so many storylines from this game.
So Josh Lyle and I were at the ASU football game. They were in the press box so they could see the game a little better than I could. I was on the field. I walk up to the press box after the game, and there's some TVs scattered around, and I get a drink, and I look over the press box, and it's like, did they accidentally put a basketball lower third on this game? And I walk over, and I was like, no way. I thought it was in 6 or 7 overtimes. There were still 3 minutes left in the game. What was so crazy was that this wasn't an overtime game.
What was so crazy to me, well, first off the fact that this was actually finished in regulation. But
Which I was very upset about.
I know.
wanted overtime.
Could you imagine if there was like 100 points scored by some team? UCLA has scored 14 points in each of their first 3 games. I get Wazoo is not a, lockdown powerhouse defense, but the fact that they roll into Pullman and put up 67 points after not even being able to crack 20 in their first 3 games, which, by the way, I know Oklahoma is the superior times 8 team to UCLA, but it's not like their defense is lethal either. UCLA put up 14 points on the Oklahoma defense, but they put up 67 on Wazoo.
With 50 of those coming in the second half. 50 points in the second half.
And I know that UCLA is still only 1-3, and I know DTR had struggled before this game, but I mean, this has to be a sign of life for a UCLA team that's kind of looking to revive themselves under Chip Kelly and kind of find their identity again. And for a guy like DTR who just went for 500 yards, UCLA has some real momentum going into the rest of Pac-12 play, I think.
Yeah, again, what a fantastic game it was, but it's now time to move on. Now, before we get to the other segments, I quickly want to go over this, guys, because it's an interesting situation that's happening. It seems like there's more information coming out about it every day. So yesterday, the starting quarterback for Houston, De'Aaron King, came out and said, I'm going to sit out the rest of the season, and I'm going to get my red shirt and come back next season. And immediately everyone's like, oh my goodness, he's going to be transferring, which is what I thought, which is what Lyle thought. And we said first thing, wow, he's going to transfer to Oklahoma, win the Heisman next year, and continue the trend. But he came out today and said he has no plans of transferring. He plans on staying at Houston. So,
well, here's the big thing why is because his dad came out and said to the media that he's transferring. And that's why it was put out there.
Which
I thought his dad said he's not transferring.
No, his dad said he was, and then he came out and said he's wrong.
Which is what makes this thing even stranger, because if you're transferring, makes total sense. Get out of Houston. He's going to be a grad transfer, go play a final year for a contender. But if he plans on staying at Houston, my only thing is maybe because they're 1-3 this season. The season's going to be a wash next year. Maybe they have some talent coming in. Maybe they're going to be better next year. He wants to compete maybe for the New Year's Six Bowl. Maybe that, but if that's not the case, I have no clue why he's doing this.
Here's another thing to consider is one, he gets another year of eligibility, so he's going to be in college another year, which just means that he can grow as a quarterback and a person, hopefully get to the next level. Something else to consider, though, is
I don't think NFL teams are really going to like De'Aaron King coming out of college if he has another solid year, but he's going to be older. So is that something maybe you want? Do you want a younger guy? Do you want maybe an older guy who's a rookie? I don't know. I mean, it's just something to consider.
Super smart to come out in the draft class with Tua and Trevor Lawrence. That makes you look real good.
No. You mean Fields and Lawrence?
What did I say?
Tua.
Oh yeah, Fields and Lawrence. Tua will be this.
Yeah. I wonder how much NFL draft stock he's really going to have to begin with, just because, I mean, you know how many haters were around when Lamar Jackson was getting drafted, and De'Aaron King's a little bit smaller than that, and he's probably not as good of a passer as Lamar Jackson is. So, you know, I wonder if he thinks he can actually build on that stock if he stays one more year. The problem is, like what Josh said, he's going to be a lot older. What I thought about when he announced this whole thing was kind of a bigger picture type thing. Is this going to be a trend-setting thing? I mean, is this going to really start a trend in college football? Because what I thought the whole point of this rule was going to be is a lot of the freshmen and a lot of the guys who don't get a lot of playing time, they can get some reps and still save a year of eligibility. But now are there going to be more superstar-type players that play 4 games and sit out to save a year?
Who knows? Well, I mean, what if they just reverse it where they sit out the entire, but then they come back for weeks like 9 through 12 when they're needed most, and that way they just guide them into like a bowl game or guide them somewhere, but
make them look like the hero at the end of the season.
It's interesting. So I guess, I guess he had some interview, I think, today where he came out and talked about it. So overall, it's just a really weird situation, but hey, if he wants to do this, by all means, go for it.
Max said it earlier. It's their new rules, so guys are going to play with it. But imagine if there are like, all right, you can redshirt. How many times can you redshirt? Once or twice?
You can redshirt once.
I think it depends on injuries.
I think you can get a medical red shirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because about to say, what if he plays 4 games for the next 6 years in college and just keeps going to college?
He should just pull like a Taysom Hill or something, just
Or a
go on a
Blake
mission
Harris.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
Do that, and then be Taysom Hill and be 26 when you leave, or be Case Keenum and be like 25 when you leave Houston.
You too, dog.
Who knows? Hey, I'm only 23 years old, so that's okay. We're going to move now to our next segment of Over Under. We had to skip it last week for time, but I got 2 great ones for you guys this week.
Have you been keeping track of these?
Well, I don't keep track of them. We're going to look at the end of the year because these are yearly Over
that's
Unders.
true.
Don't insult his intelligence, Josh.
Don't insult my intelligence, Derek.
I don't want to be on your podcast anymore, Blake.
Oh,
Derek.
I can't believe you actually had that ready to go. Fantastic.
I know this podcast is a very big part of your life. You've mentioned it to me multiple times.
So for those of you that watch Bachelor in Paradise, you're going to understand it. Yeah, I don't want to get copyrighted for that, BK. All right, guys, the over-under, turn up that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire music just a tad so I can get the full-on atmosphere
Right,
going on
like
here.
you're not going to get copyrighted for this.
No, they don't. All right, guys, first one. Last season, 3 quarterbacks in college football finished the year with 4,000 passing yards. So the over-under for this year, guys, 3.5.
Over.
Over.
I'm going to go with over. I think we're going to get maybe 5 or 6. Now, bonus points for those that can name the 3 quarterbacks that did it last year.
Let's see.
Haskins.
That is one.
Kyler.
That is the other.
Trevor. No, he
No.
didn't play every game.
Probably some Big 12.
Hawaii.
No.
Is it Mason Fine? from
No.
North Tech?
Who was TT's quarterback last year? Who's
Not
his
him.
tag?
De'Aaron?
Nope.
Was it Rudolph?
Nope.
Man, who was it? That's tough.
Was it Peyton Ramsey at Indiana?
It is. No, it's not.
Why don't you tell us?
Gardner Minshew.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that was so...
Gardner
wow,
Minshew.
we should have got that.
Now, we talked about them just a few minutes ago, but UCF got their first loss of the season. So for UCF losses on the season, over under 1.5.
That just means they need one more.
That is correct.
They need one more. If they play Houston, who apparently is not good,
Not anymore.
I'm going to take... Maybe they'll lose to Connecticut this week. I'm taking the under.
Under.
1.5 total loss for UCF.
That is correct, Brady.
I'm going under.
I'm going to go under as well. But this could backfire where they completely now say, our season's over.
They're
Let's
gonna lose
just
this week.
Let's just completely go under. But that does wrap up this edition of Over Under. Now, before we move into the Q&A, guys, now, like I said, it's kind of changing every week. So our Heisman picks. Now, I personally, mine is changing every week. I have an updated one. I don't know if your guys have changed. You guys can do your top 3, your top 5. But Josh, your updated Heisman rankings. That was a big yawn.
Yeah, it's been a long day. But I'm excited to be here. Not too many changes. For me, I am sliding in Joe Burrow. So I've got Jalen Hurts. I've still got Tua because his numbers are pretty, Tua-like. I'm sliding in Joe Burrow. I really like what he's doing this year with LSU. And I'm going Jonathan Taylor. And I'm still keeping Justin Herbert in. But you know what? Anthony Gordon is not far behind, at least for now. We'll see how Washington State does this year.
All right, 1 through 5. Jalen, Burrow, Tua, Fields, Jonathan Taylor.
Same 5 as Lyle.
Was it actually?
Like legitimately, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it was, Brady.
Yeah.
No,
It is.
I got a top 4, and I tweeted it the other day, so I had to go back because I forgot who I put. I got Jalen Hurts at 1, Joe Burrow at 2, Jonathan Taylor at 3, and Justin Fields at 4. It's amazing. Trevor Lawrence is I don't even know if he's in top 10 at this point.
He has struggled a little bit this year.
Well,
We talked about that.
unfortunately, we are not taking callers this week for the Q&A because we're just too low on time. We took a caller earlier in the show, and that was a pretty good caller, I would say. So we are going to move now and transition into the Q&A. Guys, let's have this done by 8:20. That way we have 10 minutes for the pick'ems. So let's get things underway. Now this, again, we're staying on the topic here, but this comes from Sports by JR, and he wants to know, will UCF recover and finish as the highest-ranked Group of 5 team, or will another team, like Boise State, for example, snag that New Year's Six bowl bid?
I think that UCF recovers a little bit, but I do think that Boise State is going to snag the BCS, or I guess the New Year's Six. BCS doesn't exist anymore. The New York Six bowl bid this year, because I think they have a pretty easy schedule. I think they've got to go to Utah State, and I think that could be a tough game. But they don't have Fresno this year. I think Boise State goes undefeated.
I do too. They do not have a tough schedule, and they might have the best quarterback under center that they've had in a long time. This Hank Bachmeier kid, true freshman, he's been really, really good so far. So I don't see Boise State going down anytime soon.
What was the question? And also, is there anybody named Nick on our show? Because apparently he just tweeted out and said to call into the show.
No.
No?
Well, I don't think there's someone named Nick on our show.
Not that I know of.
Well,
Maybe it's from Australia. Who knows?
Who knows?
What was the question?
let's see. Let me get this back up. Do you think UCF will recover and finish as the highest-ranked Group of 5 team, or will another team like Boise State snag the New Year's Six bowl bid?
I like Boise State. I think UCF's going to recover, but I think Boise State could finish undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, I like Boise State too. I mean, I'd have to go and look at the AP poll currently and see what teams are on the cusp of it, but I think Boise State and UCF are the favorites. Hey, don't sleep on Utah State. They're nasty. I like the Aggies. They're go Ags. Caleb Rosenblum wants to know if you could bring one former college player back for their team this year, who would it be? Now, it's you're getting that player in their absolute prime, and you're putting them on their current team now. Who would you do?
Terrell Suggs.
Sizzle.
Bringing him back to ASU.
It's a good one.
I think it'd be fun to watch him in person.
That is a really good one, man.
Rudy.
Oh.
Yeah. He'll get his one snap. He'll sack the quarterback, and that'll be that.
Rudy was offsides.
I'm trying. I mean, Jalen Smith was some type of player at Notre Dame, and for a defense that's good, but maybe not the same they were last year, to see him come back in his prime is pretty incredible. So I'll go with Jalen.
What about Bo Jackson?
You took mine.
I mean, how
hate
could
you.
it not be? Imagine.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of college football players it could have been.
Hang on. What about Reggie Bush?
Reggie,
That was my number 2.
See, I wrote down Reggie and then just switched to Terrell Suggs, but I also had Jake the Snake written down for ASU. I think watching Marcus Allen at his prime would have been cool.
I also had, well, if we're sticking on Notre Dame, I had Tim Brown on mine. Maybe that would have been more fun because that's like more of a
Well, I guess I'm going to have to go with another USC running back.
All right, I got one. What about JJ at Wisconsin? JJ Watt? Have him just coupled with that offensive line they have going there?
Who is it, Blake? Who are you taking?
I mean, it's this guy that really,
Anthony Davis?
I can't.
Charles White?
I can't.
Lendale White?
Is it yours truly? Let's leave it at that.
It's yours truly.
Oh, O.J. Simpson.
Okay. Anyway, well, I was going to say Bo Jackson, because if you had Bo Jackson and Bo Nix at the helm, that'd be a fantastic
Bo's
duo.
nose.
That'd be a fantastic duo. I think getting Reggie Bush back at SC, but I know the NCAA wouldn't allow that to happen.
They threw a
regardless of
flag because a
anything.
USC player high-fived him in the end zone. That was the softest penalty I've ever seen in my life.
So
and
how
you
about-
should be ashamed,
How about
NCAA.
we just get George Bush 1 back at Yale? Back in his day.
H-Dub. H-dub.
I don't know. I mean,
The fact
maybe
that you called him George Bush 1.
George Bush won. Hey, maybe like get Tim Tebow back in Florida.
Ooh.
That way he can turn down all the money he'd be making off his likeliness.
Likeness.
Likeliness.
Oh, whatever.
Oh, no.
Oh, whatever. That
How
was a good question,
likely
though.
is he to make money, Blake?
What does that remind me of? Oh, that's the. It reminds me of the Steve Carell from The
Office,
Office.
yeah.
That's what it sounds exactly like.
Yeah.
What a great sound.
By the way,
bite.
it's not that. That's Blake when Todd Gurley wasn't given the football.
Yeah, Todd Gurley was on the 1 yard line and he couldn't punch it. And it sounds a lot like Josh Adams from last season for the Philadelphia Eagles. I needed him to get a touchdown. Man, was I upset about that. Now, this is another. We have one question here I wrote down. It's kind of a fun one. And then one I want to go to that's on Twitter that I didn't write down. This is going to be a quick one. Gage Martins wants to know, who do you think has the coolest logo in the country?
I gotta be honest.
Okay.
I really like ASU's pitchfork.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame's is cool. I like the USC, the Trojan head. Michigan's is unique. You know, Boise State and Army have really cool logos because I like the Army one that has the helmet with the sword through it. I think that's cool too.
I was going to go with, speaking of sticking with helmets, I think San Jose State's is really cool.
It's a cool one too.
Yeah.
Are we talking
Well-
are we talking like logo or like jerseys?
Logo.
That's
Like
the
logo.
question was
The
logo.
question was logo.
Well, no, I know, but then he started talking about like the jerseys.
Nope,
and so the
never once
well,
said
the-
jersey.
Well, the helmets and stuff.
Never once. Yeah, the helmet. The logo
Spartan
is like
helmet.
a Spartan helmet.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go with Cornell. They have a cool logo.
Big Red. That's
The
Big
bear.
Red.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the bear.
Hey,
I
that's
was gonna
Big
say
Red
the-
Bear. That's Big Red Bear.
Yeah, I like it.
Shout out to Jay on that
And
one.
Meredith.
And my mom too.
And, oh, that's right. They found love at Cornell.
Don't insult their intelligence.
I'm
gonna
gonna
Blake.
love in a hopeless place.
I'm gonna tear up right now. I'm looking right now because I just googled some really cool ones just because I know there's gonna be some that I forget. I love the East Carolina one with like the pirate
pirate.
with
The skull, right?
Or yeah,
That one?
because they used to be a pirate, but then they changed it to a skull.
Skull's awesome.
So that's really cool. And there's a bunch of fun ones, but our final one, guys, this comes from Ash. I can't say his Twitter handle because that would get us kicked off of Blaze.
Do it. You
for
won't.
the second time. The first question is, can I get a shout out for listening from England at 3 a.m.?
Oh, good day, mate.
So Ash, if you're listening, I hope you're enjoying a nice thing of fish and chips. And if you're listening, tweet us right now so we can confirm that you're listening. So I guess I'll be looking.
a nice warm beer.
So I guess we'll be waiting about 8 or 9 minutes to get his tweet because of the fat delay. But he wants to get a shout out for listening from England at 3 a.m. His second question is, I've been watching college football since 2012, but I don't follow or support any particular team. Who should I be a fan of and why? And he says ASU is a cop-out. So guys, he should be an ASU fan. Ash, you should be an ASU fan, but he wants us to expand our horizons a little. So make your pitch, guys, as to what team he should be a fan of and why.
I was thinking that if you support a Premier League team in England, I think you should try to find some sort of similarities.
Ooh, I like that.
So one reason why I became a Manchester United fan like 8 years ago was because they were red and yellow, just like ASU. They had a
USC.
long... like USC, excuse me. They had a long-standing rivalry with a team that wasn't in their city, which was Liverpool, kind of like USC and Notre Dame. And they also had an in-city rival. They had a crosstown rival who shared the same colors as UCLA, Manchester City. And Manchester United is arguably one of the greatest football clubs of all time, as USC is one of the greatest programs of all time. Plus, every single time I watched Premier League, it was just United, and I loved Wayne Rooney. So with all of those, I chose United. So if you can find something like that, maybe.
That answer just made too much sense. Chattanooga, they need fans and they're on the come up.
I'm going to go with a team that's got one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Hey guys, thank you. We love you, man. Go Tigers.
But he's also a big fan. I don't know if you guys know this. He's a big fan of Hummers.
Hey, I'm Coach O. I just love my Hummer. I believe the Hummer is the best.
We're not going to run this whole 30-second ad, but
No, I just did the quick
BK
clip of it.
somehow found an old Ed Orgeron
LSU, just for
Hummer-
Coach O.
Hummer ad when he was at Ole
Hey, I'm
Miss.
Coach O. I just love my Hummer.
There you go. I'm not going to make a pitch for anyone else because you should be an Arizona State fan just because, well, you should. But that does bring us now
right.
to the pick'ems. Guys, we have exactly 10 minutes to get these pick'ems done. So we're going to be doing these quicker than we've ever done them before, which, by the way, before we get to that, I have to go over I'm just talking like what is it, like the auctioneer in Storage Wars? When he's
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
All right, so going to our college pick'em boards right now. Leading the way with 30 points And a two-way tie is B Shep _16 and Jim Softball.
Way to go, Jim.
Softball, I get it. That's funny.
Not hardball.
Softball.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
Softball.
Blake, we are running out of time.
That's all right, Brady. Cue that music up. It is time to get to these pick'ems.
Who's winning our
right
league?
now? And I'm going to get him, but I need to hear my great music playing. It just gets me going.
What about the breaking news sound effect?
That's a good one too. Turn up just a bit because last week it was a little low. That is fantastic.
Suddenly
I mean, we
we're
are
all
talking
talking
so
really
fast. That is all right. And in fourth place still with 23 points is me. In third place. No! In third place. In third place, with 24 points, is Lyle. In second place, with 25 points, is Brady.
Oh my goodness.
And in first place, with 27, is Josh.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, sir.
All right, maybe turn the music down just actually a tad. It is a little loud, but that's okay. All right,
Beggars
boys.
can't be choosers.
We now got 9 minutes, and we have a record 18 pickups this week.
Hey, we got 30 seconds up
So we got 30 seconds of pick 'em. This is going to be fantastic. This is going to be a lot of fun. First game, guys, Duke at Virginia Tech.
Duke versus Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech's slightly the better team, and they've got the edge because they're at home. I'm taking the Hokies.
B-Tech.
Virginia Tech.
I'm going to go with the Hokies in this one. Number 12, Penn State at Maryland.
Number 12, Penn State. They're going on the road to face off with Maryland. I think Maryland kind of is the real deal, but they proved that they're not, so I'm taking Penn State on the road.
Good team, just not as good as Penn State. Nittany Lions.
Penn State, Nittany Lions. Go Lions.
Penn State is on upset watch this week, but I need to catch up on points. So I'm going to go with Penn State in this one. BYU at Toledo.
BYU versus Toledo. They've played some pretty good teams so far, so I'm taking the Cougars.
BYU.
BYU.
What was that?
Josh, this is awesome.
Yeah, you sound
I
like
mean-
Peter Griffin when he drank a bunch of Red
Red
Bull.
Bull.
Yeah, I want to say hi to Chris Mix. Do we lower
All right, well, we have more time than that, so we don't need to
No,
go
we don't.
full auctioneer on this. I'm going to go with the Cougars in this one. Number 18, Virginia at number 10, Notre Dame.
Well, if we've got time, I think Virginia's pretty good, and I like Bryce Perkins at quarterback a lot. But since this game's at Notre Dame, and I do think that Notre Dame is a little bit better, I think I'm going to take Ian Book and the Irish.
Yeah, this game's back in South Bend. I don't think Notre Dame loses back-to-back. I got the Irish.
Notre Dame and the Irish.
I'm going to go with the Irish as well. I'm just going slow on purpose. Number 21, USC at number 17, Washington.
Dude, this is so tough. So, I pick against USC and they win. I pick USC and they lose. I pick against USC and they win. And maybe also because I think that UW's a little bit better and they're at home, I'm going to pick UW, question mark.
Hey, it's a win-win situation. Either they win and you get the point, or you're wrong and SC wins.
You know, I'm not very biased at all, but I'm going to take Washington because I do think that they're at home and I think they're the better team, and there are just too many question marks with SC. So until they can really prove me wrong, I'm taking the Huskies.
Yeah, I'll take Washington too. Matt Fink in his second game, and unless is Slovis supposed to come back?
As of right now, it's Fink because Slovis has not been cleared to practice, but during our show, they announced that Fink is still slated to start.
Yeah, so
but
I
nothing
mean-
confirmed.
So I mean, he had a really good week against Utah, but I think Jake Eason's on a whole nother level, at least offensively. I got Washington.
Washington.
I'm going to go with the Huskies. Wake Forest at Boston College. Wake Forest just barely missing out on the top 25.
This is interesting. I'm going to flip at the last second. I'm taking Wake Forest on the road because I want to ride with BC, but I just can't, so I'm taking Wake.
I got Wake Forest too. Demon Deacons.
Wake Forest.
I'm going to go with Wake Forest as well. Have we picked the same for all of these so far?
Yeah, odds are all of us are going to be wrong on all of them.
Exactly. At least the first three. Iowa State at Baylor.
I'm taking the Cyclones because I don't care what Lyle says. A Cyclone could beat an Oklahoma State Cowboy in a mascot battle, and it can beat a Bear too. I'm taking Iowa State.
Well, I got Iowa State.
Bears beats the Cyclones. Baylor.
I'm going to go with Baylor in this one. What?
That was funny.
Thank you.
You didn't get it, but I thought that was really
you.
good.
That
All right,
it was funny.
6 minutes and 11 games to go. Minnesota at Purdue.
Purdue.
Yeah, I got Purdue.
Minnesota.
Blake, you're the one taking the most time.
Well, I mean, honestly, this is a battle of two good receivers, Rondell Moore, Tyler Johnson. So I mean, they'll
It's
be
a
on.
good
They're not
game.
going to battle each other, Lyle. They're on the same side of the ball.
yeah, Lyle.
All right, I'm
No,
going to
I know
go with
they're not
Purdue.
gonna battle.
I'm going to go with Purdue. Cincinnati at Marshall.
I'm taking Cincinnati on the road. I still like what the Bearcats have got this year, despite that obliteration at Ohio State.
Yeah, I got Cincinnati. They'll take Marshall.
We are going to lose to Cincinnati. I'm going Cincinnati.
I'm going to go with Marshall in this one. Not so fast, my friend.
You're not my
Mississippi State at number 12, Auburn.
Love Kylan Hill, but I like Auburn as a team a little bit more, taking the Tigers at home.
Yeah, I like Auburn too. I think Bo Nix actually improves on what he did last week offensively.
Auburn with Bo Jackson and Bo Nix. They're going to win.
Yeah, I don't know why I put number 12 Auburn here because they're ranked 7th currently. So
That's your fault. Does that change anything?
I'm gonna go with Auburn in this one. Number 24, Kansas State at Oklahoma State.
Kansas State's 3-0. They've cracked the top 25, so I feel like the safe pick is them, but not so fast, my friend. I'm taking Oklahoma State at home with Tylan Wallace.
Pistol Pete, Oklahoma State,
Jeez.
and Shooter McGavin.
Is this your ball?
This is the only thing Pistol Pete's going to win. He's not going to win a fight against a Hurricane. He's not going to win a fight against a Cyclone, but they're going to win against the Wildcats of Kansas State. So I'm going Oklahoma State.
I'm gonna go Oklahoma State as well. NC State at Florida State.
Guys, here is something that we haven't done in a little while, and I am picking Florida State with confidence.
What?
Yep.
It's because Alex Hornibrook's at the helm, isn't it?
I'm taking NC State.
Tomahawk chop, going Florida State.
I'm gonna go with Florida State as well. I want to get on this hype train. I'm gonna go. Wow, I just said I'm gonna go with number 5 Ohio State at Nebraska. College game day this week.
Dude, I don't know what Nebraska's doing. I really don't. I can't follow. I'm taking Ohio State. I think that's the easy choice for me.
I think Justin Fields exposes these guys. Ohio State.
OH.
Hey,
IO.
as long as Adrian Martinez gets me a lot of fantasy points this week, I'll be happy. But I'm going to go with Ohio State. Washington State at number 19, Utah.
I think Utah's going to get a big bounce back game. I think it's close. I think it's really close because USC exposed this Utah secondary. You know Anthony Gordon can too. But I think Utah's offense can roll over this Wazoo defense.
I actually think this is a fairly high-scoring game, even with the Utah defense, but I've got the Utes taking it.
Utes.
If Zach Moss isn't playing, they got nothing really for the run game. Now, their backup did go for like 200-something yards against USC, but I'm going to go with Washington State in this game. If they don't lose to UCLA, they're still probably a top 15 team. Hawaii at Nevada.
I've got the Bows on the road.
I got Nevada.
I got Hawaii, the Fighting Kendall Hunes.
Ooh. I'm going to go with the Fighting Cole McDonald's and go with Hawaii. UCLA at Arizona. This is going to be a good Pac-12 after dark game.
You just know it is. And now I still don't have confidence in picking UCLA. I just can't. I am also not confident in Arizona. But I'm a little more confident in Arizona. So I'm taking the Wildcats. Wildcats get you ahead in the game.
I was going to say that.
I got UCLA. They went back-to-back on the road.
I'm going U of A, Arizona.
You know who the best character from High School Musical was that often gets overlooked?
Sharpay.
Corbin Blue.
Mr. Bolton.
Oh, the dad.
Oh, yeah. Dad.
Dude, he
What a
kind of
guy.
reminds me of Gardner Minshew's dad if you saw him this past
What a
week.
fantastic guy. I think he really is the best part of High School Musical.
And he did eventually buy into his son wanting to sing and dance at the end.
There you go. So, Mr.
He's
Bolton.
clapping in the crowd.
I'm going to go with UCLA. I think they're going to ride this out, which brings us to the worst of the worst, featuring two teams that have already been in the worst of the worst. A team that was in the worst of the worst last week. They're so bad they make it in back-to-back weeks, and that is the 0-4 Akron Zips at the 0-4 UMass Minutemen.
Two nicknames you don't want to have.
Yes. Well, we're really short on time, and both these teams are 0-4, and both of these teams only have 2 syllables in their names, so that doesn't really help me narrow it down. But you know what? A comes before U, so I'm taking A Akron.
Yeah, we got to hurry this up. So, UMass.
I'm going with UMass because you know why, Lyle?
Because
Why not?
Brady?
I'm looking at this right now.
Hurry up.
Oh, please. I'm trying to see what the spread is for this game, but I just can't seem to
67.5.
find it. Akron's the favorite in this game, so I'm going to go with Akron.
Wow.
I want to get my point.
Wow.
Final game, ASU at Cal, who's ranked, 15 now? My goodness, it's a Friday night game.
I know we all picked, first of all, Friday night football in college. Ugh, everybody loves that.
Not as much as Thursday
Josh's
night.
team's 2 weeks in a row on Friday Night Football.
Don't want to talk about it. Look, we all picked ASU over Colorado, I'm pretty sure. But guys, I mean, them losing to Colorado a week after beating Sparty on the road is the most predictable ASU football thing ever. And since they lost to an inferior Colorado team, there is no reason for me to believe that they won't go to Cal and beat them 19-3. I'm taking the Devils on the road on Friday. I don't think Cal's a top 15 team in the country.
Look, Cal has 2 big wins. One was at UW with some seriously unique weather conditions with the lightning storm, and they won at Ole Miss, which they probably shouldn't have, but that's a story in itself. So in reality, are they as good as their record says? I don't know. We're going to find out this weekend. I'm going to take ASU.
As my pal Manny Wilkins says, Fur Devils. I'm going with ASU.
You know, yeah, what the heck? I'm going to go with Cal on this one. It's a win-win situation. Either ASU wins and I'm happy, or they lose but I still get a point and these guys don't. So I'm going to go with Cal. But it's going to be a great game this Friday night. I can't stress out how much I love college football, but another great show. Shout out to Max Browne for calling in a very fun interview. Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter at the HHShow_. Listen live next week on BlazeRadioOnline.com at 10 o'clock Eastern at night.
At night.
At night. For Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, and Brady Klein, this has been Blake Harris from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in beautiful downtown Phoenix. And we will see you guys next week. Oh.